Hey, welcome back, sixth grade. I know it's been a week, but I know the entire week, whatever you're doing, you were just hoping to see this face again, bringing the Word of God through your Bible books, through Screencastify and all that sort of stuff. And actually, today, it's actually a really exciting one because this particular story from Joshua chapter 10. We are on lesson 36, by the way. But the story today from Joshua chapter 10, verses 1 through 28, we're talking about the longest day, the day that the sun stood still. This is one of those cool stories in the Bible that was the events of the Bible were actually recorded in other historical documents. And in other words, people who didn't follow God, people who didn't write the Bible, who wrote historical documents that were not with a biblical perspective, record the same information that our Bible does, therefore making a more reliable historical document. The Bible wasn't written as a historical document, but it is definitely is for us beyond just faith, just we see it as fact. So, getting into it, why does God bless us? Ooh, why does he do that? He gives us all sorts of different things. I'm going to bring this over here so every single time that I look in my book, I'm not going way off screen or whatnot. Anyways, so we're supposed to read the account of Joshua's attack on the Amorites found in Joshua chapter 10, verses 1 through 28, and then respond to all of the following questions. All right. So I'm going to be stopping here and there and showing you guys what to put in those blanks. Number one, name the 5 kings where they're from. Then circle the name of the ringleader king. The one that we're going to put in the first space next to king, that is the ringleader king. And it shows up here right at the beginning of very first one. As soon as Adonai Zedek, king of Jerusalem. So up at the top where it says king, we put Adonai Zedek. If you're not sure how to spell it, it's right there. Yay. And Jerusalem, you would write underneath that. So Adonai Zedek, and in the green box right below it, you write Jerusalem. Heard how Joshua had captured Ai and had devoted it to destruction, doing to Ai and its king what had once been done to Jericho and its king. You guys remember Jericho. All that stuff. Now the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were among them. He feared greatly because Gibeon was a great city and one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, all of its men were big, scary warriors. So Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, he sent to Hoham, king of Hebron. So the next one in the pink box where it says king next to Adonizedek, we write Hoham. Yes, as in pig. But Hoham, and underneath that, the location would be Ebron. Okay. Oh, why is that flickering with me? I don't know. That's disturbing. Anyways, Hoham, king of Hebron. So that's the king, and that's his location. Um, to Piram, king of Jarmuth. So next king is Piram, Piram, and Jarmuth, Jarmuth. Okay. To Japhia, king of Lachish. These are awesome names, by the way. They're fun to pronounce. Everybody say Lachish. It's kind of fun. Sounds like something you would say to somebody, like a rude way to say "shut up." Siblings over in the corner while you're trying to do your homework. Lachish seems like something you would say. I don't know. And to Debir, king of Eglon. So we've got all of our kings. Adonizedek underneath that Jerusalem, Hoham underneath that Hebron, Piram, Jarmuth, Japhia, Lachish, Debir, Eglon. You know, gotta wonder if the king of Hebron got together with the if he was actually the king of Eglon, would they call that kingdom ham and eggs? I think they should, but they didn't. So that's history. Number 2, name the city the coalition kings were going to attack. We already know that one from our reading. That is Gibeon. Now, see, Gibeon is actually a city that Joshua wasn't supposed to necessarily make a treaty with. That was kind of against that was not part of God's plan. So when an Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, heard about this treaty, he sought help from four other kings because he knew that Joshua was coming. Remember, Jerusalem's not necessarily run by God's people anymore. Adonizedek has definitely fallen away from God and his ways. Um, See, the thing is Joshua wasn't supposed to make a coalition or a treaty with this city, but they reached out to him and asked for mercy, and Joshua did. It wasn't part of God's plan, but Joshua did it anyways. And he just basically showed mercy to them. And guess what? God was okay with that. He was okay with showing them mercy. So, anyways, verse 4. Adonizedek says, "Come up to me and help me, and let us strike Gibeon, for it has made peace with Joshua and the people of Israel." Then the five kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon, gathered their forces and went up with all their armies and camps against Gibeon and made war against it. And the men of Gibeon sent Joshua at the camp of Gilgal, saying, "Do not relax your hand from your servants. Hey, remember us? You made a peace treaty with us? Come help us. They're surrounding us. This is not good." Whew. So Joshua, verse 7, went up from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. And the Lord said to Joshua, "Do not fear them, for I've given them into your hands. Not a man of them shall stand before you." So Joshua's thinking, okay, all of these guys are going to die. God said so. So Joshua came upon them suddenly, having marched up all night from Gilgal, and the Lord threw the people, the five different armies, into a panic before Israel, who struck them with a great blow at Gibeon and chased them all the way to the ascent of Beth Horon and struck them as far as Azekah and Makkedah. And as they fled before Israel, they were going down to the ascent of Beth Horon. The Lord threw down large stones from heaven on them as far as Azekah, and they died. There are more who died because of the hailstones than the sons of Israel who killed with the sword. So basically, Joshua marches up all night. Probably after a long march, his army's probably not tip top, not totally happy and great with everything that's going on, but they're there and they attack. But God he makes all of the other soldiers confused. And so they don't know how to defend themselves. They don't know how to attack. God confused their minds. They're kind of like, what is this thing? It's a sword. Use it against them. Use it against who? And then they get killed. God kind of threw that confusion in there. Big advantage for the Israelites when the other team doesn't know that they're in a war and fighting, and you do. Going to be tough for them to defend themselves. Anyways, they all get panicked and they start to run away. But when they run away, they run down into this one particular place where God just says, "You know what, army, you've been marching long enough." And he starts to throw hailstones on them, hailstones large enough to kill them. And it does. So at the time, Joshua spoke to the Lord, verse 12, in the day when the Lord gave the Amorites over to the sons of Israel, and he said in the sight of Israel, "Sun, stand still at Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Ahilon." And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped. The sun stood still, and the moon stopped, based upon Joshua's request, until the nation took vengeance on their enemies. Ha! Is this not written in the book of Joshua? The sun stopped in the midst of the heaven. It did not hurry to set out for, this is important, about a whole day. There has been no day like it before or since, and the Lord heeded the voice of man, for the Lord fought for Israel. So Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, to the camp at Gilgal. Remember, this is back in the day before electricity. They don't have spotlights or whatnot to continue lighting the battlefield, or thermo night vision, whatever sort of thing. So when the sun began to set, he saw that these armies were starting to scatter. Joshua said, Lord, can you do something about the sun so that they don't get away, so we can chase them and finish this off, so they don't rally back together again another day with more kingdoms to try and crush our friends?" And God said, "Sure, sun stand still, moon stand still." And they did. Now that part where it says this is not written in the book of Jashar. Remember, Jashar is one of those other countries that we're talking about, but we're gonna learn a little bit more about that in a second. Now, 5 Amorite kings are executed. These 5 kings fled and hid themselves to the cave of Makkedah. And it was told for Joshua, these 5 kings have been found hidden in the cave at Makkedah. And Joshua said, roll large stones against the mouth of the cave and set men by it to guard them. But do not stay there yourselves. Pursue your enemies, attack their rear guard. Do not let them enter the cities, for the Lord your God has given them into your hand. Same thing that God told Joshua. Joshua was telling them, God has this in the bag. When Joshua and the sons of Israel had finished striking them with a great blow until they were all wiped out, and when the remnant that remained of them had entered into the fortified cities, then all the people returned safe to Joshua at the camp of Makkedah. Not a man moved his tongue against any of the people of Israel. Then Joshua said, open the mouth of the cave and bring those 5 kings out to me from the cave. And they did so. And they brought these 5 kings out to him from the cave: the king of Jerusalem, king of Hebron, king of Jarmuth, king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon. So when they brought these kings out to Joshua, Joshua summoned all the men of Israel and said the chiefs to the men who had gone with him, come near, put your feet on the necks of these kings. Whoa. Kings. Those ones you've been served your whole life, I want you to lay down. You guys, you generals, you chiefs of these different tribes that are fighting for God, put your feet on their necks. Joshua said to them, do not be afraid or dismayed. Be strong or courageous, for the Lord will do to your enemies against whom you fight. And afterward, Joshua struck them and put them to death, and he hanged them on 5 trees. Whew. And he hung them on the trees until evening. But at the time that the sun was going down, Joshua commanded, and they took them down from the trees and threw them into a cave where they had hidden themselves. And they set large stones against the mouth of the cave, which remain to this very day. As for Makkedah, Joshua captured on it that day and struck it and its king and the edge of the sword. He devoted the destruction of every person to it. He left none remaining. Remember, God said, going to wipe them all out. And he did to the king of Makkedah just as he had done to the king of Jericho. Wiped everything out. Joshua obeyed God. Now, I think it's important to note a couple of different things. One, the fact that Joshua didn't have to help the people of Gibeon. The Gibeonites reached out and asked for help. He made that treaty with them, and that wasn't part of what God told him to do. But they asked for mercy, and Joshua gave it to them. And then when they asked for help, Joshua, he could have allowed the coalition to destroy. He could have allowed those 5 kings just go ahead and destroy Gibeon, and that would release him from the treaty that he created with them without God's help. But he did make a promise. He made the promise without God, but he did make a promise and he held up to it. He kept his word for the Gibeonites. Only the big thing is this time he sought God's help and counsel and what to do. And God said, go ahead and go after them. I'm going to help you protect them. You made this promise to these people. Therefore, they're important to me too. Our God's a God who listens to us. Our God's a God who listens. And even we're not sure if God is in favor of what we're doing, God still supports us. He's a good, good, good Father. He gives us all sorts of things. The other thing to mention about this before we fill in some blanks here, take a look at the screen. Has the missing day in the book of Joshua been proven scientifically? Now, there's all sorts of different things. There's a guy named Harold Hill, president of the Curtiss Engine Company in Baltimore, Maryland, had a consultant in the space program, and he released the following development. Basically, they called in the service department to check it out, and they were looking at all sorts of different things, going in the records and looking at back in the movements of stars. They called in service department to check it out and said, "What's wrong?" Well, they found that there was a day actually missing in space from elapsed time. They scratched their heads, they kind of tore their hair. There's no really answer. Finally, a Christian man on the team said, one time I was in Sunday school, they talked about the sun standing still, kind of like we're talking about now, although it's not Sunday school. There's no answer. Finally, a Christian man, while they didn't believe him, they didn't have an answer for it either. So they said, "Show us." He got a Bible, went to the back of the book of Joshua, where they found a pretty ridiculous statement for anyone with common sense. There they found the Lord saying to Joshua, "Fear them not, I have delivered them into my hand. There shall not a man of them stand before thee." Joshua was concerned because he's surrounded by the enemy, and if darkness fell, they could overpower him. So Joshua asked the Lord to make the sun stand still. That's right. The sun stood still and the moon stayed and hastened not to go down for about a whole day. They checked their computers going back in time, and it was found that the space, the time lapse that they could see in the stars alignment, the anomaly that didn't happen anywhere else in history, was about 23 hours and 20 minutes. Not a whole day, 40 minutes shy, right? But see, they read in the Bible it was about approximately a day. These little words in the Bible um, are important because they were still in trouble. They're still in trouble because if you can't account for 40 minutes, you'll still be in trouble. 1,000 years from now, 40 minutes had to be found because it been multiplied many times over and over in orbits. But the Christian employee thought about it. You remember somewhere in the Bible where it said that the sun went backwards. Scientists told him that he was out of his mind, but they took out the book and they read in the book of Second Kings. Basically, they looked back through the star records and they found it to be true. They looked in other historical documents aside from the Bible, and they all mentioned the sun stood up for an abnormally large amount of time, about a whole day. This is something no other place in history records why this happened except the Bible. The Bible is the only one that provides an explanation. Speaking of providing explanations, let's get back into your workbooks. So, name the location of, we're on number 3, I believe. Name the location of Joshua when he received word of the attack. That is Gilgal. Gilgal. Write what the Lord said to Joshua in verse 8. Guys, go back to verse 8 if you remember. Okay, let's go back to it. That's verse. Do not fear them, for I have given in your hands. Not a man of them shall stand before you. Write that down on the line, folks. Name 3 things the Lord did for Joshua and the Israelite army in order to bring them to victory. First one, he confused the Amorites, right? They got panicked. He confused them. What else? Remember the really bad weather day that they had? Yeah. Large hailstones from heaven, killing more of them this way than with the sword. Okay? Last thing that he did is the one we've been talking about so much. He made the sun stand still so that they couldn't get away in darkness and regroup and attack them. Yeah, 3 big things. Made them confused, threw hailstones at them, caused the sun to stay up for an extra day. About an extra day. About. Now, number 6, what did Joshua request in regard to the sun, and why did he request this? We've talked about this. He asked for the sun to stand still so that he and his army could finish the battle and defeat the Amorites. If you're wondering how to spell Amorites, it's capital A Morites. This Bible video is not sponsored by Coke or the Rockies. I just happen to have this cup because I'm talking too much and I need to rehydrate my voice, I guess. Lakshish. Anyway, number 7. How did God respond? Write out verse 13. Well, let's go down to verse 13, shall we? And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped until the nation took vengeance on its enemies. Took about a day. So that's what you need to write. And the sun stood still, and the moon stopped until the nation took vengeance on its enemies. Now, go down to those review words where it says review. Control. What is the definition of the word control? Well, it is to have complete power and authority over. What is control? To have complete power and authority over. Uno mas. To have complete power and authority over. You know what? I'm just going to go through for the sake of time and how long this video goes. You can pause it and rewind it if you did not hear a definition. Time. A measure of a period of existence. Bless. To confer good things upon. Yeah. Now, we're going to talk about remarkable blessings. We're going to talk about these guys in particular. Who are these guys, you might ask? Well, back in 2005, These guys decided it would be a good idea to go on a little fishing trip together. That's what they had with them. So 17-year-old Josh Long doo-doo-doo, and 15-year-old Troy Driscoll loved going fishing. On the next page where it says remarkable blessings, by the way. One day they set out for in a small sailboat to fish for a shark off the coast of North Carolina. Suddenly, a riptide caught their boat and blustery winds pushed it out to sea. Soon the boys were lost. For the next 6 days, Josh and Troy prayed, sang hymns, and watched for other boats. They took turns sleeping during the day when the sea was calmer, and at night, 8-foot waves rocked their boat. The boys huddled together for warmth and shared a wetsuit that they found in the boat. Where's their wetsuit? You can see part of it right there. Anyways, finally, spotted by a fishing boat, the boys were rescued near Cape Fear, more than 100 miles from where they set sail in South Carolina. You can see it right here. There's where they were, near Charleston, Southern Island. The storm made them go about 100 miles up the coast, up off of North Carolina and Cape Fear. Kind of don't know exactly why they named it Cape Fear. I know there's a movie and several stories written about it, but yeah, they were rescued at Cape Fear. Recuperating in the hospital from dehydration, sunburns, cuts, and bruises, Josh said, "Oh, here we go. You want to see how bad the sunburns were? Yeah. Yeah. Lips were blistered, eyes were really, you could see he tried to keep himself covered up. You could see the difference in the skin tone between where he tried to keep himself covered up, huddled over, and his arms and his face that were exposed. So, recuperating in the hospital from dehydration, sunburns, cuts, and bruises, Josh said, God had us in his hands the whole time. We just pray and pray and pray, and we kind of realized, well, if we don't make it, we know where we're going. So they kind of had peace knowing that even if they were going to die in this fishing boat, they had faith that they were going to heaven. That's remarkable faith. Um, the boys' parents thanked God when the Coast Guard called with the news of their rescue. Troy's dad said that if they had not given up hope, that they had not given up hope of a miracle. He said angels had surrounded the boys. When asked, the boys agreed that they would go fishing together again, but not right away. Don't know if I'd get back in that boat. Not that one in particular. I'd definitely take GPS or an extra motor so that we don't get lost out there, or just not go that far off the coast and look at the freaking weather reports. Anyways, question number one: how did God care for the boys? How did he take care of them? Well, he kept them safe, right? He arranged things so the boys are going to be rescued by that fishing boat that was going to spot them at that exact time in that exact place, right? Gave them faith. The Holy Spirit continued to care for them and give them faith that things are going to be okay. Now, what did Josh mean, number two, when he said, well, if we don't make it, we know we're going to heaven? We talked about that. I kind of gave that one away, right? Yeah, he knew that if they died out there, even of dehydration and all the different things, that God was going to take them to heaven. Now, number three, and the following one, want to tell about a time when God cared for and protected you during a difficult situation. That doesn't have to be necessarily you were lost at sea situation. Maybe it was. But think about a time when something really difficult was going on. Maybe you were caught in the middle of two friends fighting. Maybe something bad was going on at home. Maybe you were really worried or scared about something, and God provided something for you to take care of you during that time. Now, go ahead and write about that. And then the follow up question after that is, why does God continue to bless us and provide for all the people day in and day out? Don't know if you remember from your memory books from back in like fifth grade and fourth grade and third grade, but the words of the explanation for the first article, I believe in God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, mean that God made everything, and he supplies us with our daily bread, right? Um, and the explanation that Martin Luther comes up with for this one, based upon many scripture verses, is that he does this out of fatherly, divine goodness and mercy, without any merit or worthiness in me. Because keep in mind, he gives daily bread to me and to you And people who don't believe in him and people who outright degrade his name and say, "Screw you, God," and say, "There's no way I'm ever believing in that stupid crap of Christianity." Yeah, God stops and prays for them as well. He does all this out of fatherly divine goodness. It's an awesome thing that he does, and he's an amazing God. Let's look it down in Psalm 103, verse 13. As the Father shows compassion to his children, so the Lord shows compassion to those who fear him. Good, healthy fear. All right, guys. Want to thank you for joining me for the end of lesson 36. I'll see you pretty quick for lesson 37.